In Rollback, you will actually see the characters jump continuing forward for 10 frames, they will actually cross you up and then teleport back already doing the super dash. Guilty Gear Strive Netcode in Dragon Ball FighterZ. How likely is this change to happen, and if it did happen, how exactly would it benefit you as a player? I think there are a lot of myths as to what Rollback actually does, and while overall the online experience would definitely be a lot better in pretty much every way, it won't suddenly turn you into a fighting game god even if you are good at the game offline. With Rollback, players expect less lag. Rollback has the ability to make your inputs feel like offline, so you would drop less combos and you'd be able to react to mix-ups a lot better. Except, not all of these things are necessarily true. Let's talk about it. But before we get into it, a word from today's sponsor, Keeps. Did you know that 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35? If you're one of those 2 out of 3, which is the majority of dudes, Keeps is here to help you. And they've made it so easy that you can actually get treated from the comfort of your own house. No need to go to the doctor and get a prescription. You can visit a doctor online with Keeps and get the medication you need delivered to your home every 3 months. There's no magic solution, there's no special potion that will grow you a full head of hair. The best way to keep your hair is by preventing hair loss. Treatments can take up from 4 to 6 months, sometimes even more, to see results. So the sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you will save. If you're noticing that you're losing hair, do something about it. For a limited time, if you go to keeps.com/Globku, you'll get 50% off your first order. Link down below. Thank you, Keeps, for sponsoring this video. Alright, let's talk about expectations. What do players think they will get if Rollback makes it to Dragon Ball FighterZ? We had this conversation last Monday on my Twitch channel, and I learned a lot, and I think chat also learned a lot from that discussion. The first expectation is, Rollback will give me less lag. The short answer is yes, you will feel less lag with Rollback compared to the delay-based netcode. Thing is, lag can mean a lot of different things, and not all of these are solved with Rollback. Usually lag either means the input delay, the delay variance, or the stutters or freezes. Input delay is the time it takes for your buttons from your controller to reach the game. In FighterZ, on a stable connection, you can see how big the delay is by looking at the bottom of the screen. Rollback will not get rid of delay. In fact, Rollback only works if there is some delay, depending on distance. But usually, there needs to be delay. Strive doesn't really tell you how much it's delaying your inputs, but even if you look at Plus R, an Arxis game that has implemented Rollback recently, when you start an online match, you can set the delay before you get in. This is done so the game stutters less and there's less of a risk of both players desyncing. That said, the delay that Rollback needs will always be smaller than the delay that you get with delay-based netcode. So your input delay wouldn't be gone, but it would certainly be smaller. You will feel less lag. Then we have frame variance, which is when the frames start going crazy, usually caused by Wi-Fi. There's an instability in the connection and the input delay starts to change, and with Rollback, the input delay wouldn't change, but the number of Rollback frames can increase and decrease depending on that instability. This means you will still control your character with the same input delay, it will feel stable, but the opponent might start teleporting around the stage even more than usual. There are upsides and downsides to this. If you're comboing your opponent, you won't feel their Wi-Fi at all. But if you're in neutral and you're both jumping around, it will theoretically be harder to react to their movement. It's not a great situation in delay or Rollback, but in delay at least you can see what's happening instead of the opponent just teleporting. That said, it is a lot harder to break Strive's Rollback like this than it is to feel this variance in FighterZ, which literally happens all the time. So yes, you will also get less lag this way, though in very specific cases, it could actually screw you over. Finally, the stutters and the freezes, it's kind of the same idea as previously. They will probably happen less frequently, but they will still happen. I've had this happen multiple times during the Strive beta, and it wasn't just when I was playing against Japan, it happened when playing people from Europe, which is where I'm from as well. And it sucks in both cases. I don't think this type of lag will change that much no matter the type of netcode, but it is a little bit harder to break Rollback. So less lag? Yes, this is definitely a realistic expectation. Next, my inputs would feel like offline. Feeling like offline is a very subjective thing. Your inputs will have delay, as I explained earlier. Strive has input delay, it's just not telling you how much there is. It's probably calculating it based on the ping that is displayed. The delay with Rollback is smaller than with the delay-based netcode, but there is definitely delay. Rollback is not offline. Regarding feel, I think that's up to each player. I mean, if you are practicing FighterZ with a 2-frame delay and that feels like offline to you, then yeah, it will probably feel like offline, though technically it isn't. Now, I would also like to look into some situations that happen all the time in fighters and how those would change with the Strive's netcode, instead of just talking about netcode in very vague terms as we have so far. So chat said, it will be easier to pull off hard combos, and also I will drop less combos. 100%. Rollback handles a lot of things locally and often tries to predict what your opponent is going to do next, so the experience feels as offline as possible. When you're comboing your opponents, there's nothing they can do, so predicting what they're gonna do next is easy. They're gonna keep getting hit, unless the connection is so bad that the game actually freezes. You will have a smooth connection and you won't drop combos because of lag. I have a few Kid Buu corner combos that I haven't even practiced because I know that I will drop them 90% of the time because of how random net play conditions can be in fighters. With Strive's netcode, I would totally be practicing those in the lab and trying to implement them more in matches. Hit confirming is the one thing that may be awkward in extreme cases. Check out this clip from Dr. Blue. He got in with Melia, got the hit, won the match, and then the game was like, hold up, he actually blocked that. So it could happen that you get the hit on the opponent and then the game corrects itself and shows the opponent blocking. It's not like you're gonna be able to confirm like 5 frames of rollback, that's too fast for you. But let's say you 2H'd your opponent, the cinematic camera changed and everything, and then it returned to normal because the opponent actually blocked that. Those 2 animations may definitely be enough to throw you off. Next, and this is a big one, it will make it easier to react to mix-ups. I think this is a big misinterpretation. Because sure, your delay isn't as big, so when you stand up or block a cross-up, your character on screen will react faster than usual. The thing is, you will also have less time to react in a lot of situations. Let's take a universal overhead, for instance, and give it a pretty extreme case of 10 frame delay. For this example, we're gonna forget all about the consoles and PC's native input delay. It's just 10 frames. The universal overhead is a 24 frame move. In Dragon Ball FighterZ, you will see all of those 24 frames, but your reaction is delayed by 10 frames, which means in practice, you only have 14 frames to react. In Rollback, you don't have that delayed reaction. Your character stands up as soon as you do it with your controller. But what Rollback does is it eats up the startup frames of that move. So instead of seeing the 24 frames of startup, the game would skip the first 10 frames and you would only see the last 14. So if you're getting hit by this move on a delay-based netcode, you will probably still be getting hit on Rollback. This actually happened to me when fighting Fanrich. He had me cornered with Kai and hit me with a super fast crouching slash. I counted the frames and this crouching slash was on screen for 5 frames before he hit me. According to Dustloop, it's a 10 frame move, which means the game ate the first 5 frames. Let's give you another messed up example that would happen all the time in fighters. Hard knockdown, character jumps forward and super dashes, faking the cross up. In delay, your reaction is delayed by 10 frames, making it super hard to block this on reaction. In Rollback, you will actually see the characters jump continuing forward for 10 frames. They will actually cross you up and then teleport back already doing the super dash. In this situation, I think this mix is even harder to block than in delay. That said, mid-block string, if the inputs are buffered, it will be easier to react for sure. The game already knows that you're gonna do 6M way before the move comes out, because you've buffered the input. So you'll see the whole thing happening and block it without any issues. And furthermore, we're talking about a 10 frame delay connection, which in fighters, it's pretty easy to get. But 10 frames of rollback in Strive, even Portugal to Japan had 7 rollback frames tops. Strive's netcode handles distances like a champ. So yes, Strive's netcode would make it easier to react to mix-ups. Even if teleports happen, the same situation in fighters with delayed netcode would be completely unreactable. But that is mostly because of how good Strive's rollback netcode is and how bad fighters delay netcode is. Even within the world of delay-based netcode, fighters manages to be pretty terrible. Final expectation from chat. International online tournaments would be possible. I mean, they're already possible with fighters delay, but I get what you mean. The Dragon Ball FighterZ Nationals could have been an international competition. I agree, but I don't think the competition would be worldwide. Europe to Japan is playable, but it's not ideal. Certainly not good enough for an official tournament. It's more than we've ever gotten in any fighting game. It's the best experience from Europe to Japan I've ever played, but it's still not good enough for a tournament. On the other hand, we could see, for instance, the United States all play within the same tournament instead of splitting the East and West Coast. Spain and France could both play in a Europe tournament. I mean, they could have done that already. I don't think that had anything to do with the netcode. But yes, it would make international international, not worldwide tournaments a possibility. That said, I think it's only during COVID times. During non-COVID times, there are always tournaments, but offline tournaments are the ones that matter. And even with Strive's netcode, I don't think that's gonna change. With that, we move on to the big question. How likely is this change to really happen? Could Rollback come to Dragon Ball FighterZ, or are we misplacing our hopes? I only know of one AAA fighting game that has successfully changed their netcode after launch, and that was Mortal Kombat X. It took them roughly a year to do it, and a ton of money. This is not an easy change, and usually I just say straight up no, this is not happening. There are, however, 3 factors with FighterZ specifically that make me hopeful. The first one is ArcSys already did this with Guilty Gear plus R. They've successfully changed the netcode on an already released game, and granted, their work was based on a fan project, but they have seen what it takes, they know the process. Even if that was a 2D game and doing it now for FighterZ would be kinda different, having that experience gives them enough to stand on when pitching this change to Bandai Namco. The second factor is the praise that Strive is getting for its netcode, and at launch, the netcode could be a really good selling point that turns into game sales. I honestly don't think the netcode is a big deal for the mainstream audience, and by that I mean everyone on this channel cares about netcode, the entire FGC cares about it, but the biggest majority of players don't. They don't even know what netcode is. The things they care about are characters, the cool visuals, the big flashy combos, that type of stuff. That's what sells fighting games, and not netcode, unfortunately. That said, good netcode can translate into good word of mouth. If the way we are having fun with this game online can make it to the mainstream, then you could have an argument that the good netcode has boosted this game's sales. And when money talks, money talks. The third factor is Dragon Ball FighterZ is one of the biggest fighting games ever. They have made enough of a profit to actually pull this off. That said, that profit doesn't necessarily mean they would invest in this. It's all about how much money are they gonna realistically make if they invest in this netcode change. And that's when these factors of hope, for me, start turning into factors of despair. FighterZ has already sold most of the copies it's ever gonna sell. The bulk of the revenue now comes from DLC. So with that in mind, if you were Bandai Namco, would you still put a ridiculous amount of money into changing the netcode in FighterZ to sell a bit more DLC, or would you just make Dragon Ball FighterZ 2 with Rollback? Everyone who bought the first FighterZ is gonna buy FighterZ 2 and potentially even more, turning that investment into an even bigger profit. I think the answer is obvious, and sadly, it's not the one we want to hear. But I hope this video has given you a clearer picture of what Rollback would look like in FighterZ. Special thanks to Keeps for sponsoring this video, linked down below for 50% off your first order. And as always, thank you very much for watching. My name is Globku, and I'll see you next time. Bye.